knows for certain what the future will hold, but we all have a responsibility to think about what's likely to happen and prepare for it. I'm Kalpana Singhal, founder and CEO Techplus Media Group and CXO TV, and I'm really honored to welcome you all to this very timely fireside chat on predicting the future of technology-enabled digital services in financial services. To prepare organizations for the future, financial businesses need to work now to get the right people and technology in place to take advantage of the inevitable disruption. That's not likely to happen without a clear vision and strategy for finance in a digital world. Now is the time to step back and make sure your roadmap to that future is clear. And for that, we have with us a special guest, Avinash Godkhindi, MD and CEO Zaggle, to discuss key aspects and strategies to be considered for transforming your organization to become digital to the core while maintaining an efficient, stable culture to keep up with the competition. A very warm welcome to you, Avinash.
Thank you. Thank you, Kalpana.
So, Avinash, to begin, please share your journey so far with us.
Sure. So as I mentioned, I grew up in Delhi, did my engineering in Bangalore, worked for my first 7 years as a banking software consultant. So traveled around the world as a consultant, started off with Citi, traveled around Brazil, Bangladesh, Botswana, parts of Northern Africa, Western Africa, spent a year in the UK, spent a year and a half in Brussels in Belgium with ING Bank. And then moved to business school, went to Chicago Booth. So did my summers with Barclays in London. And then came back to the States, completed my MBA, rejoined Citi in a leadership program after my MBA in the States, and came back to Citi India. Was product head for prepaid cards for a short while, and then launched and ran a credit card called Premier Miles. Ran it for about 18 months. It was India's #2 travel credit card, was profitable. And then I got an opportunity to meet Raj, who's the founder and chairman of Zaggle, a little over 10 and a half years ago. So we sort of hit off. We liked each other. I loved what he was trying to build. A network agnostic ecosystem, which was tech driven, scalable, had global aspirations. And we were trying to build something in an area where we had an unfair advantage or some sort of know-how in that space, right? So it seemed a very clear strategy, a clear approach. So I jumped ship a little over 10 years ago, and it's been a Zaggle journey hence since then.
Sure. So, Avinash, jumping right into the context of our today's topic, like what are the 3 major changes you have seen in the customer expectations which are impacting business models?
Well, it's a fairly broad question, Kalpana, and I'll try to give a stab at it. See, look, at the core, what's happened is with digitization and with people becoming more, connected and savvy, tech savvy, expectations are on broad levels, right? One is everybody wants everything faster, right? Everybody wants more transparency and clarity, right? And everybody wants it to be very convenient. So what does it mean from our business context? What it means is when you say faster, you want everything to be API driven, everything to be real time. There is no way a customer is willing to wait, whether it's a consumer or a business, right? Folks are just simply not willing to wait for information to come into them. They're also looking for that information to be presented in a very clear and absorbable manner. So what does that mean? You need to be a lot more, enabled in terms of graphics, interface, user experience has to be at the core and heart of what you build. And convenience. So convenience today is almost a synonym to mobile. Right? If your solution is not mobile first, if you're still stuck in web platforms, that's something which both consumers as well as businesses simply have rejected, at least in the Indian context, and we see that in the global context as well. That everybody wants that solution to be accessible through an app. They may choose to use it through a web portal, but probably 6 or 7 out of 10 customers that we have, users, are solely mobile, so they don't go to a web dashboard, right? So that's how the world has moved, and obviously our businesses and our business models need to embrace this, and I use the word very consciously, embrace, because typically what we've been taught in business schools and elsewhere is that you need to adapt or adopt to the changes. I don't think that's enough. Today, customers really are trying to see, do you embrace their choices? And when you embrace them wholeheartedly, you'll see that your customers start to love you.
Yeah. So it's all about speed, visibility, and the customer experience in this way.
Absolutely.
So when you say apps, so you think people, because for everything, if we have apps, so is that the consumer has that kind of a mindset of downloading these many number of apps?
Perfect question, Kalpana. That's again another dichotomy, right? While consumers want everything on the mobile, they want to limit the number of apps, right? And we've seen this trend time after time, where employees have gone back to their HR and their Spox in the organization saying, why should I have a separate app for my rewards, a separate app for my recognition, a separate app for my reimbursements, for my tax benefits, for my expenses? Why can't I have that all in a single ecosystem? And I want this to be extremely secure. I want my data to be extremely sacrosanct. And I don't want, any pesky calls for folks trying to sell me insurance or whatever, right? Any of those random services are simply not acceptable. So that's where we step in as Zaggle. We have a full-fledged platform which allows employees to be able to access modules which cater to all these needs, right? And that's where this becomes very differentiated from what market typically has to offer, where you have separate apps, one for rewards, one for recognition, another for reimbursements, another for tax benefits, employees very clearly, and users across board, not just employees, because the power has shifted from companies to millennials. Okay, employees today call the shots, whether we like it or not, and it's again one of those things that we are better off as founders and CEOs of companies, that we recognize and accept that and embrace it, saying, look, the younger generation thinks and acts differently, and we need to be able to keep pace with them. So because that's the future, that's actually the present as well. So our platform is a single platform, a single app, which allows you to be able to access all these services. So essentially, if you look at it, it's the white space between HRMS and ERP, right? Today, that white space is all dominated by Excel sheets and emails. We are coming in and digitizing that whole space and making it, a platform which is hooked into the HRMS on one side and the ERP on the other.
That's nice. It's all under one roof.
Absolutely, yeah.
So as business face disruptions in complex scenarios, how do you see the role of tech leaders getting complex as digital transformers?
See, I think the concept of a tech leader has now evolved to say, if you're a business leader, you need to be a tech leader, right? You may not be somebody who's coding, right? You may not be somebody who's taking, system architecture design decisions. But if you are not tech savvy, and if you don't have a mindset which is tech first, mobile first, if you aren't operating on those paradigms, you're a dinosaur. And that's something which, I say very responsibly. That is the reality of our world today. And that entire process has only gotten accelerated by, actually in our industry, three things. One was demonetization. Demonetization really accelerated the digitization of spends in India. Keeping the whether it was right or wrong, I don't want to get into that. But the reality is that it did make a huge difference in terms of how the common person was thinking of payments and money, right? The second thing that's happened is GST has gotten implemented, and that's something which has really forced SMBs and startups to have a platform, a technology system, which is forcing them to, make it accessible to, the governments and the departments as to what's their business and how that business is conducted. Now, Kalpana, it's very interesting. Initially, there was some resistance, but now companies have started to realize that, so given the fact that it's inevitable, how do I then take advantage of the fact that now I'm digitizing? There's a regulatory cost to it, which is real and it has to be borne. What is the plus side of this? And as companies have shifted their thought process, they are seeing that there is so much benefit that they are deriving out of it, right? So it's something which was in some ways enforced, and in my view, rightly so. And today, companies are seeing the benefit of that also to them. The third, of course, the world's greatest CTO, COVID. COVID accelerated all these phenomena, just forced everyone to, all the ifs and buts were thrown out of the window and people just had to take decisions very rapidly. And these three events have basically forced the world, in Indian context, in COVID, for example, the world, that a business leader cannot today say, I'm a business leader, but I have no understanding or interest in the tech. Right? Every industry has become a tech industry. Some industries are more tech, some industries are less tech, but industry or no business which can say I have no tech aspects to my business.
Yeah, completely resonates with you, Avinash. COVID has actually, put it in a track wherein we have actually almost skipped the stage of POCs.
Absolutely.
So no more POCs are happening and straight people are actually executing the projects.
Right, and it looks like we're doing fine. So I think,
in fact, SMEs and SMBs have tasted like, how it is, because earlier they were pretty confused at whether they should go for such investments or not. But now they have seen like how it has actually helped and streamlined the processes, and in a way, they are getting ROI out of it, and the businesses are getting benefited. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
The SMEs need to compete with the large global players and large Indian players, right? We all know the companies that I'm referring to. These are multinational giants, right? And basically, you're trying to get into a gun battle with a sword, right? Already the SME is disadvantaged because of lack of scale vis-a-vis these global giants. And if you're still continuing to work in the old ways, it's just it's a no match, right? So even to be respected by the larger entities and to be considered potential partners rather than competition, you need to have a very significant tech mindset. When your platforms are API friendly, when your systems are able to consume APIs, when you're able to expose APIs, whether the software is of the SME or they have that software procured from a third party or they have a vendor for that, that doesn't matter. But to banks and to the large giants that I'm talking of, for them to be able to consider you as potential partners, you need to be showing that capability to be able to consume their APIs and if you can expose your APIs, right?
Yeah, right. So what are the unique challenges in financial services which require deep intervention?
See, financial services is firstly very heavily regulated, and rightly so, because it's people's money that we're talking of. And obviously that has to be taken with a degree of seriousness, which is higher than other industries. What that means is that there will be constant changes, there will be constant demands coming in from the regulator to protect, to safeguard the consumers, to protect and safeguard the weaker segments of society, smaller business owners. And we need to, again, there's no point in complaining about it. The simplest way is to stay in touch with what the regulation is, stay in touch with the regulator, and try and, again, embrace it. I keep going back to that word because there's no point in trying to fight it. You're much better off understanding why regulation is built the way it is And if you are able to, understand the letter and spirit of regulation, you are far better off and far less likely to be caught, sort of surprised. And that letter and spirit is very important. A lot of players in the fintech space have historically tried to be compliant by letter, but not by spirit, potentially operating in gray areas. It's come to bite them. And there are recent examples of that. So our view historically has been to always err on the side of caution, to be compliant both by letter and spirit. And that's held us in very good stead in all these years. Right? So that's one very important aspect. The other aspect is data privacy and data security. Right. So we are one of the few companies in India in the fintech space, Kalpana, today, which is GDPR certified and compliant. We are ISO certified and compliant. We are PCI DSS certified and compliant. Again, something which is very important. And as the Indian Privacy Bill is going to get passed, I'm hoping it will happen sooner than later. The draft is already there in the Parliament. To my understanding, limited understanding, it seems to be a very good bill. And it has a lot of components which, are similar to the GDPR European directives, right? So I think any company which wants to be in the fintech space should try and make sure that they are GDPR compliant, because that's what the Indian privacy law is also going to ask, more or less. Right? So there's the regulatory aspect, there's the security aspect, and then the third aspect is how are you trying to make sure that your customer has maximum access to their information and the customer experience is, really top notch, because nobody wants to take a loan, right? Nobody wants to discuss or think about their loan, or nobody wants to think about how am I going to pay. The funny part about fintech or payments or financial instruments is people want it to happen on the background seamlessly. They don't want to have to think too much about it. And that's why UPI has taken off, because UPI is so convenient. You just open your app, scan the code, ho gaya, done, right? So that zero friction sort of experience is what people want. They don't want to have to keep thinking, oh, I have to go to a restaurant, how do I pay, right? Or I'm applying for this loan, what is the tag, when am I going to get this? So if you're able to make it seamless and just the experience really smooth, you see much higher adoption from customers.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you rightly said that the intentions of the regulatory authority even is to give good experience to the customer, whether whatever kind of policies they are coming up with, but the intention remains same. So whether it is the fintechs or the banks, everyone has to work on the compliances and the guidelines being issued. So yeah, and as far as the data security is concerned, of course, I mean, none of the company, none of the fintech can think of running a business without considering the security, data security.
See, my question to a fintech would only be this, right? Are you GDPR certified and compliant? Right? You would be surprised, Kalpana, how many companies who tom about their data security and privacy haven't chosen to go ahead and get that certification. It's simply because not that the certification in itself is easy to get. I have to say that there is a lot of effort. You need to do a lot of changes, but it's worth the effort, because it actually, in the medium to long term, we don't look at it as an expense at all. We look at it as an investment, right? It's a statement of confidence that the company has that our systems are good, and look, we are certified, we are compliant. You don't need to worry about your data. So while a lot of companies talk of data security and privacy, when you actually ask them certificate dikhaiye, wo nahi rehta hai. So that's how. And this is where I mean, being compliant by letter and spirit, because RBI has not come in and said that you need to be GDPR compliant. Hence, a lot of fintechs, because GDPR, end of the day, is not an Indian regulation, right? It's a European regulation, yeah. And hence people have chosen not to go for it.
But I think sooner it will be here in India also the same way.
Absolutely. The privacy law is the draft is out. The Parliament is debating it. Hopefully, it should get passed soon. And then all of us have to adhere to it. So
I
that's
know
my
it's all,
suggestion to.
yeah.
Sorry,
It's
go ahead.
all about how you instill trust in within your customers also.
100%, 100%.
So, as most financial service businesses are facing challenges in visibility, control, and security of their hybrid IT environment, so what are the IT strategy changes or overall strategy changes you would suggest to address these challenges?
See, basically, first of all, you need to understand that you need to be on the cloud, right? But the difference in fintech and banks is that you need to be cloud with your data firmly in India, both your backup and your primary. So that's one non-negotiable, because if you want to scale, you need to leverage the benefit that the cloud brings to you to be able to constantly add capacity. That's one very crucial thing. The other crucial thing, and again, a lot of companies talk about this, but when you actually go ahead and ask, what's your API stack, right? Do you have APIs exposed? Can your partners actually consume those APIs? How many of your partnerships are actually with banks and companies and other entities where you are actually either consuming their APIs or your APIs are being consumed by them, right? When you ask that question point blank, you'll see that a lot of people have talk about APIs and open architecture and systems. But when you actually say, do you have a API stack? Is it exposed? Is there a sandbox environment? Can I hook into your sandbox environment and do some testing? They don't, right? And that's the difference between talk and action. So
Ironically,
again,
yeah.
yes. And the sooner companies realize, fintechs realize that, look, there's no escaping this, right? This is the reality. The world has shifted to this. This is what the customer expects, and you need to be able to offer these APIs for integration, right? So this is again a very important trend that I would say, which is there, which a lot of companies haven't really gone ahead and adopted. The third, I think, is the user journeys and the user experience. Whatever is your tech stack, that's on the that's, think of it like a car, right? What's within the hood doesn't matter that much, but when you are sitting in the car, when you are driving the car, how do you feel, right? And if you're feeling good, and if you believe that the car is dependable and it's safe, then you're going to, within whatever is the regulatory environment, the speed limit, you will, hit the road as a customer, right? But if you are not sure of what's in the hood, or you're not sure whether the car is really compliant with the safety bags, or if the seating is not comfortable, if the experience is not great, customers are just going to walk away. Right? They're just going to move away, and they're going to say, okay, there are enough options in the market. Thank you. Or they may not even talk to you. Many times the best customers just quietly move up onto competition.
They don't give a feedback only.
They don't give a feedback. They don't invest time in telling you what's wrong. Right? That's the irony of it, because nobody typically wants to deliver bad news. Right? If they're not happy with your service or product, they may just walk away quietly.
That's the reason we are seeing a lot of chief experience officers now.
Absolutely.
So what are the processes in financial services which are seeing major adoption of digital technologies according to you?
See, I think it's happening across board, but where you're seeing a lot of change kick in is on the customer facing side, right? A lot of the tech investments historically have gone on the back end side in banks and other places, simply because you wanted to be secure, you wanted to make sure that your compliance is there in terms of data storage, you're protected from hacks, etc. But now a lot of that is hygiene. The next level is to say, how can I, for example, completely offer a digital experience on KYC, right? KYC is a reality. KYC needs to be done, but how can you make it seamless, right, within regulation? Similarly with onboarding, right? How can I make sure that my onboarding journeys for a customer are completely digital? Today, you'd be surprised, Kalpana, how many banks in India on their corporate credit card and purchase card side still have a manual process. Okay, there is a physical form that's filled out, and I'm talking of fairly well-known banks. I won't name them because many of them are our partners as well. And this is the truth across board: PSU banks, private banks. A lot of these journeys are completely paper-based or partly paper-based, and that's where companies like Zaggle come in, and we are working with banks to be able to digitize that journey, that experience, and make sure that these components are completely in line with what the user expects, because the user expectation has now become an Amazon type of experience, right? Yeah. Everybody is expecting that their experience is akin to what they get on Amazon, right? And I think it's fair. I think why not? Why not demand that experience? As a consumer, I am demanding that from all other industries. So it's only fair for me to deliver that type of an experience to my customer. Yeah. So you're seeing a lot of trends where technology is adding a lot of value on the front end, on the customer journey, customer experience side, because a lot of the investments have happened in the back end and continue to happen. Right? But the front end and the experience side is sorely missing. And I mean, I'll give you an example, right? All of us use UPI, right? How many of us use our bank's UPI interface versus a Google Pay, a Phone Pay, even a Paytm, an Amazon Pay, right? A very large part of the market is using these apps versus going to their bank product or downloading Beam and using that. Right? Why? It's actually the same UPI or connecting to the same savings account, but the experience is fundamentally different with a Google Pay or a Amazon Pay, right? Or a Phone Pay. So that's the reason why people are using UPI through these interfaces and not through their bank channels. So the world has, or the nation has moved on to this, and it's just that we need to accept it and keep pace with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can see a lot of banks, nationalized banks, posting that they are working on creating metaverse with fancy names. But even at the immediate thought, what came to my mind was that still we are filling up physical forms, and we are talking about metaverse experience and all. So, so that's quite ironical. And what do you think? Like, how do you see the future of technology-enabled digital financial services in India? How long will it take to reach to that level?
See, if you look at it, India is a phenomenal story globally in terms of digitization and fintech leadership. Thanks to NPCI, I think it's the world's biggest fintech company. Right? We partner with them deeply, and they have. And NPCI is not just RuPay. A lot of us mistake it that it's just RuPay. It's RuPay, it's UPI, it's NFS. There are a whole host of platforms and systems, IMPS, which have all originated through NPCI. Right? And so there is that bedrock. And then you have the trinity of JAM basically coming in, right? So you have the Aadhaar stack, you have NPCI, you have the mobile penetration in India. So India is actually much ahead in many ways compared to a lot of the global players, right? It's just that how can we get even better, and how can we get even better uniformly, right? So if you look at, there are aspects where, like UPI, where we are streets ahead, right? Miles ahead of the other countries in the world, including China. US is way behind. China is also behind us in these matters. But can we accelerate our fintech experiences on the SMB side at the same pace as we have done on the consumer side, right? The SMBs are bleeding, they are suffering, they are crying for access for credit, and there is a lot of work that the government has done, but those schemes the dependency that the government has is on banks to be able to implement and roll out these schemes. Right? Banks, while their intent is good, but they don't have the platform, the technology to be able to roll out these schemes effectively. Right? And that's where companies like Zaggle come in, where we partner with banks on the one end, we we are in talks with the Ministry of Finance, etc., to be able to understand where the challenges are, right? And how can we help in solving these problems.
So, anything on concrete basis been finalized at how are you going to do that?
We've not yet signed a document, so it will be tough for me to share the details, but there are conversations happening. It's around trying to create a platform which allows, SMBs to make an application for a loan for a variety of the government schemes. And through the platform, which is controlled by the Ministry of Finance, these feeds would then be given to all the banks. And the banks could, at real time, go ahead and decide whether they want to lend to this SMB or not, if they want to, at what price, at what rate. That information goes back to the SMB through the Zaggle platform, through the app, and he can see that, okay, I'm getting a loan from SBI at 12%, from UCO at 10.8%, from XYZ Bank, say a Kotak Mahindra Bank at 10.5%, and then they can make a choice basis what the terms and conditions are, right? So that's an interface that we are in talks with the ministry, and hopefully we should be able to come out with something in the coming quarters.
That's quite interesting. So it will be more like facilitating those conversions, that okay, whether SMB wants to take a loan, and then which bank he can go for. Like in a policy bazaar, one can find a lot of options for getting a policy. So similarly, the Zaggle will provide a platform wherein you have a whole lot of banks, and in reference to the government scheme, wherein government is coming up with any kind of incentives for SMBs or MSMEs, so that to facilitate those, basically you're planning.
Absolutely. So the thing, Kalpana, is the government has launched a slew of schemes in the last maybe 3-4 years. Okay. And it's becoming difficult to make sure that these schemes are reaching the last mile, right? And that's where we would be able to step in, because it's not that the banks don't want to do it, it's how, right? Because banks don't have those kind of technology platforms to be able to enable these things in a seamless way. As an MSME, it doesn't matter to me whether I'm getting a loan from an SBI or a UCO or a Kotak or a IndusInd. What matters to me is at what rate and how seamlessly can I get that money, how fast can I get that money, right? What are the terms and what's the pace? So for a single bank to be able to do it is inherently a contradiction, because if a particular bank makes this platform, other banks will not necessarily come onto it.
Yeah. So in the whole scenario, how is Zaggle going to get benefited?
See, end of the day, for us, the benefits are multifold, right? In this kind of a two-sided network. On the one side, you have the SMBs. So SMBs would come to our platform. So we build a large base of SMBs beyond what we currently have. We also get, again, through our platform, hooked on to a variety of decisioning systems of various banks, right? And maybe in the get-go, not all banks would sign up, and that's fine, right? You start off with a few, and then you ramp it up. But the whole benefit is that you get connected to the banks on the one side, many of whom are already connected to us. We'll add to that ecosystem on the bank side, and on the consumer side, on the MSME side, rather, you get all these MSMEs. And to be very honest, there is a satisfaction which is very, very crucial, especially for our employees, for our own self, that you're doing something good for the nation, right? It's very important to have a purpose beyond just profits. We are one of the few profitable fintechs in India at scale, and very healthily profitable. But that that doesn't necessarily feel like the end all and be all. Profits have to be a means to an end. It cannot, or a byproduct. It cannot be the sole purpose of why you're building a company, right? And when you're able to actually see impact on the ground, that's extremely gratifying.
So that's the social responsibility also. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely, 100%.
So that brings me to the next question, like how is Zaggle positioned to address the technology challenges of businesses and automate their workflows?
See, I think we are very well positioned because unlike a lot of other players in the space, as I mentioned, we are very clear that we are a B2B2C company, right? So I'm not going to directly sell to the consumer any service. That essentially means that I have very little reason to go ahead and even think of, what can I do with your data without your consent, right? Whatever I'm doing with your data is purely on consent, purely basis, keeping what's good for you as a consumer in mind. So that's one very big differentiator. The other is, the maturity of our platform, the quality of our tech and engineering. It's very high. Simply because, Kalpana, over the years we've been able to focus on product and engineering rather than getting distracted on investing a lot in terms of marketing and creating a lot of buzz. As a B2B company, we have not required to do it. Today, we work with, we have about 4,500 corporate customers. Large number of them are enterprise and mid-market. In this market, a lot of the business that you generate is through referrals. And that is something which, we really pride ourselves in. So having that kind of leeway has allowed us to be able to invest heavily in product and tech in the last at least 4 years. And that allows us to be able to really offer a system, a platform, which is absolutely state of the art. I'll mention to you an example, right? One of our partner banks, and we've signed with them, but we've not done a PR, so I will not divulge the name, but they are the sole partner bank for a competitor, right? And this competitor was offering their solutions to this bank. And when the bank board meeting happened, one of the questions that came in is why are our employees not as satisfied as they should be? Is there something else that we can do to increase the satisfaction? And in that conversation, it came out that we need a better solution for their employee benefits, for their employee expenses, reimbursements. And even though we are in competition with this company, the bank has chosen to sign up with us to offer our platform, our software, our payment instrument to their employees, right? So that's validation, of the highest order for us. That was very satisfying that, a marquee bank, a marquee private bank has chosen to work with us without, we making a single phone call trying to sell.
Yeah. So what are those key aspects and strategies, to be considered for transforming organizations to become digital to the core while maintaining an efficient and stable culture that you're talking about?
See, I think for organizations, first of all, they need to recognize that they need to be digital, right? And it's one thing to have these things in statements. The other is to be willing to put in time, effort, and some money, invest some money. So first of all, I would ask any SMB and any company, a lot of the companies have gone through their annual budgeting by now. We are in mid-July. Let's have a look at your budgets. How much have you allocated for digitization, right? That's where the rubber hits the road. It's all good to say, oh, we are absolutely committed to digitizing. Absolutely, sir. Yes, we are there to support you, but have you allocated some budget, right? If you have not, then you really need to rethink why. Why have you not thought of allocating some money? It may not be necessarily huge amounts. I'm not saying that, devote 10% of your costs to digitization. But is there even a small allocation coming in for that, right? And if it is, then let's talk. right? Let's work with you to expose our platform and help you digitize all your spends. And if not, then my request to the promoter or the founder would be, sir, ma'am, please do consider this. This is important for your future, and whether you work with us or not, that's absolutely fine. That's your call, right? But do invest in digitization. That is not an option because sooner or later you're going to see competition take over if you don't digitize.
Of course, if you don't have big budgets, till the time you seriously try to take benefit of those government's schemes and the incentives that government is giving to SMBs and MSMEs, I think it's better to partner with companies like Zaggle
Absolutely.
to move on, at least to kickstart with the digitization.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's true. So how do you finally, last question, how do you see the financial services landscape changing over the next few years, and how tech leaders, or I would say leaders, can build a resilient and efficient IT infrastructure which meets future expectations?
Well, I think again, the world is a VUCA world. It's going to only become more complex. It's not going to become easier. You need to partner with companies who will help you declutter these volatile environments. It's very important that companies stay focused on their core competency and work with partners who can help them navigate these challenging times. Right? Who would have thought 7, 8, 10 months ago the world was a very rosy place, Kalpana, right? Everything was hunky-dory. Last Diwali, if you remember, COVID was almost gone. All of us were celebrating. Markets were up. The world was, dancing, and it was like super duper, right? But look what 7, 8, 9 months. It's not all gloom and doom, but it's the reality has sunk in. Reality has hit in, right? So. From that perspective, I think you need to be able to understand that it's becoming more complex. You cannot do it yourself, so you need partners. Secondly, I think from a tech infrastructure perspective, increasingly it's becoming important that you are on the cloud. You are not on an in-prem system, because an in-prem system is just not scalable. It's just not something which can, unless you have a very specific reason to be in-prem. I would recommend everybody to move their systems to the cloud and work with companies who can, support them as they move onto the cloud. Right? And the third thing is, every company, I would say, needs to have a digital strategy in place. What's your digital strategy? And when I use the term digital, I'm using it very broadly. It encompasses, all things tech. And beyond that, in terms of your customer experience, right? So what's your digital strategy? How are you going to address the needs of whosoever your customers are, whosoever your users are, over the course of the next 3 years, right? 3 years, 5 years. What is that approach? And that clarity, in absence of that clarity, it's very difficult for companies to move ahead. But I think the ones who really take time, effort, and invest some money in getting a clear strategy in place and executing on that strategy will emerge the winners. If you look at the US stock market 15, 20 years ago, the real leaders were all the Citibanks, the Exxon Mobils, very few tech companies in the top 5 or top 10. Today, it's all the Microsofts, the Apples, the Googles, the Facebooks. So the entire dominance of the FANGs has really, opened eyes for a lot of companies in the US. I think India is also on the cusp of those kind of things. Today, I would say Reliance, for example, is a tech company. I don't classify Reliance as an old school company, because Jio is potentially the biggest disruptor of India in the tech space. Look, they are on the top, right? And every other company that's look at what Tatas are doing with Neo, right? Tatas have realized that they need to, keep up, and they've come up with this super app, this whole ecosystem, which is very cool. Again, it's simply driven, I believe, from a realization that they need to be tech first, they need to be closer to their customer, and they need to invest in user journeys and user experiences.
Thank you so much, Avinash, for answering that last question. We talked about everything from the business challenges to the making strategies, IT strategies, and we got to know a lot about Zaggle and how Zaggle can help businesses to start with their digitalization. So thank you so much for coming and joining us today.
My pleasure. My pleasure, Kalpana.
For more updates from CXO TV, please like and subscribe to our channel.